That's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to this Star Wars, no matter what you say, expanded universe, narrated by Disney, or Lucasfilm, whichever way you slice it. Legends. Today, everybody, it's so easy. It's so easy. It's so easy. I love it. Oh man. Oh man. Time to have some fun. But, welcome to my second favorite series after New Jedi Order, Legacy of the Force. A 9-book series set after the events of New Jedi Order and Dark Nest, where tragedy befalls and everything that was ever good about the expanded universe ended, right? According to some people? No, they're just, if I cussed, effing wrong. Remember, folks, don't take Star Wars too seriously. Except when you make like 4-hour dissertations on why this is bad. Because that's what normal people do. That's how average humans spend their life. I thought normal humans go outside and go on dates and da-da-da-da-da. No, we sit here for 4 hours and talk about why a book series about a universe that doesn't exist is bad. But I'm the one with no life. Who talks to more girls? That's for you to decide. But going away from that, Legacy of the Force. What is it about? Well, Jason Solo and Ben Skywalker are master and apprentice, and that is really fun to see. They have really good chemistry and a really good dynamic. There's been years of peace since the Dark Nest crisis. It's been 5 to 6 years since those events have happened, so it's been quite some time. And it's been about 12 years since the Vong War. So a decade since the Vong War even happened. So everyone's older. Everyone's, even though the Dark Nest crisis was a thing, we're in relative peacetime. However, guess what? There's still some lingering things left over that weren't completely concluded in New Jedi Order, like Thraken Sal Solo still being a threat, and a villain from times past who was never ever actually defeated, just left alone, and we were left to assume would never be a hindrance again. But why would that be, considering they never met their comeuppance? But we'll get into that. Thraken Sal Solo is not the Prime Minister of Corellia, but he is a very high important figure in Corellia. And the rising conflict of this book is the Corellians wanting independence from the Galactic Alliance, while still using benefits from the Galactic Alliance, and that becomes a big conflict, not a huge conflict I should say, because this series does the smart thing of not having as big of a conflict as New Jedi Order, because you can't go bigger than that. So, make the overall conflict be smaller, but make the emotional stakes be higher. So, I actually found all the parts of, for example, there's a dinner scene where all the family is there and they're talking about stuff, and I've also heard that it makes no sense for Han Solo to be somewhat political because he hates politics. And you're right. How many people hate politics that talk about politics? Just in America, let alone other countries. But let's not talk about that because that hurts the narrative. But on top of that fact, Han had a child and a best friend die during the Vong War and had to see firsthand the uh, the inadequacy of the New Republic as it failed and failed and failed until everything almost went to the brink, if not for his friends being able to save the day. So, yeah, he's not too fond of the government. If he wasn't before, he's especially now. And so, you know, independence for Corellia. Sure, he may not have lived on Corellia, his entire life. He may not have spent most of his life on Corellia, but it's still his home. Much like if you grow up in a hometown or a home state, and you have family over there and everything, you may not live there anymore. But if you have a lot of people that'll be affected by such decisions, you're probably going to care a little bit. So I didn't think it was completely out of character for him to care about this particular issue. It actually makes for some dynamic and interesting discussions between him and Luke, and just makes it be a more gray conflict because this isn't a black versus white situation. This is a very gray. Obviously there's some clear black and white distinctions there with Thrak and Sal Solo doing his thing, but the overall gist of wanting independence is not of itself a bad thing, So I think all that's fascinating and wonderful. We also get more of Wedge and Tilly's daughter, Sayal, in this series, and at least a little bit. And I'm actually sad we don't get more of her. I wish there would have been like a Race Squadron 2.0 or something with her as a lead of it, because she's really quite fun and interesting in this book alone, which I would have loved to see more of her. But I don't remember her being too big of a role in the entire series, which is a shame, because she was a really cool part of it. And it's Allston again, baby, of course, so there's a lot of humor in here. Despite the serious tone of this story, there is a bit of humor in here that works quite well. I have to say, right off the bat, how much fun Ben is. Ben is so funny and such a cute little kid. And, you see, it was a very, like, Goku moment from Dragon Ball Z where they say it's an avian leg, so it's basically just a chicken leg. But Ben finds a chicken leg and starts munching on it. And Jason's like, "Do you not get enough food at the temple?" And Ben's like, "No." And they would run with that gag moving forward because I think in Fate of the Jedi, I think Ben makes food for Luke at some point, and Luke's like, "I'm not gonna eat all this," and he's like, "It's okay, it's mostly for me." Like, I don't know, little things like that. Like, he's so much fun, and he continues to grow and grow into a really fun character in this series, and continues to be in Fate of the Jedi, which just makes me, Anakin Solo is an amazing character, absolutely. But I think it's the fact that I get to spend more time with Ben that I ultimately just love Ben more. And Ben's just so much fun. But you miss out on that if you ignore this series for some stupid reason. Um, but yeah. So, and then there's everything with Jason, which is going to make it or break it for you. But of course, if you read Darkness properly, then you'd probably be accepting of this fact. But some people don't. What's the movie say? You can't handle the truth because Jason's. I'll reiterate because it's important to note that Jason is one of the most inconsistent characters in all of fiction because we have likes animals. That's all he is in his early years, and then we get to Young Jedi Knights where we add he's a jokester. That's his thing, and then we get to New Jedi Order, which begins at only a 6-month gap from the previous story, and people go, "Oh, puberty." So they're headcanoning and being an EU author while actually doing the due diligence to accurately understand whether or not it is an issue or not. It is possible to say, "I love a story," and to admit that there's still faults, correct? Right? As I will try to do if I find faults in this series. But, it's an inconsistent portrayal of him in New Jedi Order, but people generally like it, so they don't mind it. So he starts as this whiny brat that, is questioning everything, doesn't want to harm innocents, Then Traitor happens, and he still doesn't want to harm innocents. He wants to protect all life if possible, but he will do what needs to be done if necessary, which is the biggest change in his character. And he saves the day at the end of New Jedi Order. So how could he possibly go bad? I don't know. But how can you have a hero of the Clone Wars turn bad? I don't know. But so, things like that. And then Darkness was the transition piece, which people don't like. Or some people don't like. Loud voices online don't like. And so there's that. So basically, the difference between Darkness and Legacy of the Force Jason to Jason before that is that there's a consistent through line, whereas there wasn't before. So you don't have to like it, but it's just the fact that Jason's inconsistent in general. So deal with it. But yeah, if you are for it, you're going to get one of the most interesting aspects with Jason here and the arc he goes on, and it's only the start of it, as there's so much more to delve into in the other books. But of course, Jason's fantastic. Um, Luke is not the biggest part of this book, but he's still cool. Him and Mara's relationship actually shine quite well in this book, which is uh, important for moving down the line. But I think one of the biggest fun parts of this book is that there is an assault on Central Point Station because somehow it's operational again. I won't tell you because you need to read the book. But Jason and Ben go to assault it and stop it from becoming an operational weapon. And that entire section was loads upon loads of fun. Also, there's a droid there. And I'll get into that in spoilers. My God, was that brilliant. And then the second half of the book, kind of, because there's a lot of politics in the middle of it, and it does kind of drag, I'll say that for sure. In like the middle, like 230 to right up until the last couple, like 60 pages, I want to say, where it really starts ramping up. But then we deal with this. We had this fleet admiral in the beginning who started seeing his dead wife, and then we have numerous instances near the end of the book with these weird occurrences with terrorists and other things. What's going on? And then we meet this strange woman. Who is she? What does she want? She's clearly interested in Jason. What's that all about? You have to read the book to find out. But there's a lot of intriguing moving parts in this first book, and I think it's overall really good. I'll say it's vastly more intriguing than the entirety of the Force Heretic trilogy, and vastly more intriguing than the majority of James Luceno's duology in New Jedi Order, in my personal opinion, and in Balance Point, better than all of those, in my opinion. Which, of course, people are gonna go, and I live for it because you guys, I live rent free in your head, which is fine with me. But overall, I think this is a solid start to a fantastic, might I add, repeat that for the ones in the back, fantastic series. But that's all I'll say there. A lot of snark in this one. Apologies, but it's a lot of fun. But generally, no. Legacy of the Force, if you're down for it, and it's okay if you aren't, but if you are in for a treat because it's an absolutely phenomenal ride, and this is a great introduction to the entire arc. Are they all going to land? Are they all going to hit? Are they all going to be studs and not duds? We'll have to wait and see to find out. But with analysis mode on and really thinking about it and everything, I think this is a really good start to the book. And I mean, it's Aaron Allston, so you can't really go wrong. I'm getting into spoilers now. If you don't want spoilers, time to get out of here. Go read the book, okay? It's worth your time. Bye-bye. Spoiler time. Time to really piss people off. All right, let's see here. So, of course, Luke begins dreaming about the Dark Man. Who is the Dark Man? What does the Dark Man want? We learn by the end who the Dark Man is. We begin after that with Ben and Jason on a mission, which is on Adamar, which is just cool because, of course, Aaron Allston wrote Starfighters of Adamar, so it's cool to reuse that planet. Ben and Jason have this great rapport, which again is another reason why I want like a Jude Watson young adult series set after Darkness, because they have such good chemistry. I really want to see it, because again, here Jason is not a bad guy. He's definitely different because of the events of Darkness, which if you read Darkness would make this entire book more palatable, but he's not a villain by any means yet. I mostly have Jason's detachment. Whereas before, at Unifying Force, Jason wanted to protect all life, wanted everyone to be safe, and da-da-da-da-da. But now it's a thing of he sympathizes a lot, but he doesn't empathize a lot, and, he doesn't want to harm innocents unnecessarily, or harm people unnecessarily, I should say. But if you need to, you need to, and he's not going to feel bad about it, especially when they're attacking him and his cousin. I'm not going to kill you unnecessarily, but if you're in my way, I don't care that much. Luke might feel more bad about it. I'm not going to, And it's a thing of this has been the development, since the second book Onward of Darkness to here. And again, there's a 5-year gap where he further could have gone down this thing. And sure, we don't have any stories, but it's makes sense to me why he's like this now. Of course, if you're only counting Unifying Force, then it wouldn't make sense for this, but that's the whole point of Darkness. Anyway, so before he'd be like, when I cut down people, I'd be like crying and whining about it because that's what I did in like Balance Point and books before that. But now after Traitor, after Vergier, it's not as big of a deal. I can act. I don't have to feel good about it. Most of the time I feel empty about it. I don't feel good or bad either way, but it's what's done is done. Let's move on. The Thanksgiving dinner scene. It's not Thanksgiving. I just wanted to say that because a lot of Thanksgiving dinners have fighting, but it is a wonderful scene. We get to see Zach. We get to see Jaina. We get to see Jason and Ben, Mara, Leia, Han, R2-D2, C-3PO, of course, the whole shebang. Zach's not really family, but he's there. He's a close friend, but this is where they get into the whole political discussion, which I really enjoyed because it's peacetime relatively. So what do you have after that? What do you have after the unifying force? You have a smaller political conflict and old people talking about it, and that's what Han and Luke are, old people. They just are now. So, and Han has his opinions, but he still loves Luke and everything. It's not like he all of a sudden hates him or anything. And that's what families do. They talk about that sort of thing. So, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I enjoyed all the politics in this book quite a bit, actually. It's really, really interesting. And then we have Centerpoint Station being active and alive somehow. So Ben and Jason go on this mission, as I mentioned in the non-spoiler section. And then we get Anakin Solo, the droid. I love that section so much. Getting to see Ben interact with, even if it's just a construct of Anakin Solo, was interesting, to say the least. And, Ben being Luke's son, able to just convince Anakin Solo, the droid, you're not him. You're not him. And you're going to be killing a lot of innocent people if you stay online. And he goes, all right, well, I'm giving a 10-minute emergency siren thing so people can get off the station. And he says, you're asking me to die, And he's like, but you're a droid, you don't die. And he's like, I think and feel, and my life as I know it, everything I'm seeing and doing will be gone after the station goes away. Is that not, if that's not life ending, I don't know what is. I'm paraphrasing, but everything between Ben and the droid was fantastic. The station doesn't blow up, but it does become inoperational because the droid dies, therefore making it so, it's a huge setback to be able to use Centerpoint Station. And it's a good thing they didn't, because that would have been the last thing holding back a certain character that we won't meet till the next big series, so kind of good that they didn't blow it up yet. And like I said, there's the trippy Merrick wife stuff, where he's seeing his wife, telling him to do things. He's a Galactic Alliance military officer. But his wife's dead. His wife's been dead. So who is he talking to? And that's part of the mystery, which is a lot of fun. I mentioned Sayol, and she's really fun. She continues to be fun. Saxon, who's the Prime Minister of Corellia, dies because they're supposed to have this peace conference with, Admiral Pelion, Saxon, the Prime Minister of Corellia, and all the Jedi and everything. But there's an attack on the where they're at, and a double of Pelion dies because of course he has a double, and Saxon dies. So who's next in line of Corellia? That's going to be Thraken, which is a big problem. So I should also mention that Jason decided, he looked into the future and looked at all possible outcomes and realized that the best course of action was to kill Thraken, but Thraken got away, kind of like Grievous did in episode 3, so I thought that was cool. I love Thraken so much as a villain, so I'm glad they brought him back for this, and, but he gets away though. So now Thraken is seemingly the big bad of this series, for now. Then we meet Nalani, and this was interesting because they have to go to Lord, which again, that was really cool to go back to Lord. I thought that was great. But we have Nalani, and I was like, oh, so Jason trained her for a bit? When did that happen? But they say about 7 years ago. It's been 12 years since Unifying Force, and uh, about 6 or 7 years since the events of Darkness. But rereading Darkness, I realized, oh, there was literally a year jump from the first book to the second book of Darkness. So in between that 2 books is when he must have met Nalani. But Nalani's a pretty decent character in herself. We don't get too much with her, unfortunately. But what we do get, she seems very interesting, very flirty. And I also found interesting that Jason did admit that I'm not interested because there's someone else. Which is really sweet of him, despite the events of this series turn. Still, loyalty, I appreciate it. And then I wrote Ben again just because I love Ben. And he figures out a lot of things in this book, which is really good, just to show his intelligence. But then also, he's not really doing it, but he starts like, because he did a really good job like figuring out some stuff, and Jason's like, if you keep this up, you're gonna get a huge ego like Lando Calrissian. And then Ben goes to Nalani, and he's like, I don't know if I'm more suave or debonair, but how about I take you out to lunch sometime? And then Nalani's like, this kid wasn't talking that much, but now he's talking too much. Shut him up. I don't know. I think Ben's really fun. I think you're missing out if you don't like this series, because then you don't get to see Ben just be Ben, and Ben's one of the highlights of this entire series, and Fate of the Jedi for me. So I love Ben so much, and I'm sad we didn't get to see him become an adult, because Ben's honestly one of the most redeeming aspects of this entire story. Even if you hate it, I don't see how you could ever dislike Ben, because Ben's just like a sweetheart and is funny and amazing. And then we get to the mysterious woman who brings who admits to everything, to all the stuff she's been doing. Because then there's this weird part of the book where just like terrorists and unruly people, just 3 in a row in the same day, start causing problems on Lord. Jason takes care of all of it in his way. First when he blows up the ship because the guy's aiming a ship at like the civilian populace, and Nalani's trying to talk him down. But she's not really getting anywhere, and Jason blows it up. I forget what the other thing was, but then there's this guy with bombs strapped to him, and a person's tied to his back, and with pistols that he could pull at any time and start shooting individuals. And so Jason throws them up really high. They blow up, so it doesn't harm too many people. But, so that's 2 people dead over the thousands and hundreds that can be killed if he did nothing. But like, why is this all happening in a row? Well, because this one woman's been influencing all these people. And we still don't know who this one woman is. It's quite an amazing connection. I'm really happy with it, which some people want to complain, but it's one of the highlights of the EU in terms of continuity, is to reintroduce this character. But we'll get to that. But anyway, she admits to doing all that, convinces Jason, Nalani, and Ben to go with her to this place. And then she comes up with this whole story. Is she telling the truth? No. Why? Because in all the source books we have, every story we ever have, we have no mention of this character she talks about in this book, which is Darth Vectivus, a Darth Lord of the Sith who lives his entire life peacefully and was a good man. But this is crucial for Lumaya to even make Jason see the possibility that that is true. And we'll get into that. But they all end up having to fight these like dark versions of characters. So Jason fights Luke with a beard. So I imagined Jason fighting Disney Luke Skywalker, and I just thought that was really funny. Ben fights a distorted version of his mother. Mara fights a distorted version of Jake Lloyd's Anakin Skywalker. Luke fights a distorted version of Jason. For Jason, or for Luke and Mara, it's in their head, like in a dream, whereas for Jason, it's all happening real time. And then the big reveal with the lady is Lumaya. Lumaya from the old Marvel comics. Now again, she never died. In her she had one short story where she took over a couple things and we just never heard from her again. But that was an unresolved plot thread. She wasn't dead. We're just gonna ignore that? It's like, well, everything was wrapped up in New Jedi Order. No, Thracken's still around. Thracken wasn't even in prison at the end of Unifying Force. He wasn't. And again, Lumaya, sure, we hadn't heard of her in years, but that was still unresolved. Why wouldn't she do anything? What was she doing? Where has she been? Well, now we get to see her again. And that's great. That's such a great piece of continuity. Also, what a way to say I love you, Marvel Comics, by making them more important. Because a lot of people just went like, oh, that's S-canon. Like, we don't have to just ignore them. Because nobody really mentions them in our books. So it doesn't matter. And now you have a direct character from the Marvel Comics, which immediately elevates the importance of those comics. That's beautiful. That's the EU in a nutshell. That's what the EU did. That's what the EU always did. So props to them. Because they could have come up with some random new Sith Lord or some Sith Acolyte or someone that just liked the Sith, right? But instead, they brought back Lumaya. Somebody that probably not a lot of people care to see return or, forgot about because it's the Marvel Comics from the 70s and early 80s. Like, who cares? Well, they did, and they included it. And I love that. But here's the biggest thing. What does Lumaya say? And this is a big controversial part as well. That Vajir was a Sith. But this is very important. The order of the way she does such things. Because first she starts this story about Darth Vectivus. A Darth who never did any wrong. And then hammering the point home, she brings in Vajir. Now how does she even know about Vajir? Now at first I thought there's going to be an actual legitimate issue that people could bring up with this series. But then I remembered, and I just read it recently, with New Jedi Order in the duology by James Luceno, after the events with Han and everything, Vajir disappears for a bit. And she doesn't return till like the second book of Edge of Victory by Greg Keyes. And there's a couple months in between those stories. So in between that time, because she doesn't say where she was, doesn't say what she was doing, she could have met Lumaya. How? I don't know. But it's conceivable that she could have met her during that time. So there is precedence for it, because she kind of just dips for a while, and then she just reappears, joining back with the Vong in Edge of Victory. And you're like, what? Because she leaves, and then what was she doing in between that time? We don't know. It's left a mystery. But the big thing with that is that Lumaya says that Vajir is a Sith. Now she needs Jason to at least consider that in order for this to work. Because of course Lumaya is trying to turn Jason to the ways of the Sith. But this is very important. Again, especially under my interpretation of everything. And this is basically the way that Unifying Force ended anyway, which is that there's no light or dark side. It is only you. So, again, of course, the way Allston kind of writes this, it feels like Jason does believe in light and dark side, so that is a legitimate issue with me. However, you could also argue, if you wanted to be an EU writer, that it is Jason probing her, because he knows what the Sith believe, because he's well read. But it is weirdly worded, because and this is consistent with Unifying Force and Darkness, that he doesn't believe in light or dark side anymore. But with that point, she talks about it for a good long while before she even mentions Vajir. This is a very calculated move on her part. She talks about Darth Vectivus, how he lived a good life, peaceful life, never harmed anybody, never hurt a soul. That's why you don't know about him, because he didn't do anything worthy of no. And then Vajir, who is the most influential person ever in Jason's life. But what does Darth Vectivus reaffirm? The story's BS. But if you think for a second that it's true, is that likely if you believe in light and dark side? No, it's not possible because the dark side corrupts. But if you believe, as Vizier taught, that the light and dark side are constructs made by limited-minded people, and that the truth of the matter is that if you kill a bunch of people like Emperor Palpatine did, or Vader did, it is because you are the problem. You are always the problem. There's nothing influencing you. You are just bad. That was Vizier's belief. You could only turn bad if you, in your heart, is tainted. Not because something's changing you or externally making you bad. You are bad. You are always bad. But Jason, you're not bad, therefore you can't fall. That was the whole shtick, and I've gone on and on and on about this in Traitor, which I'm sure my haters and people who enjoy my reviews have already watched. So, for that instance, it's important that Lumaya convinces Jason, or at least makes him start to think, oh, a Sith Lord who was good. Because under Jason's belief, it's just different philosophies, different ideologies about the way of life. The Sith and Jedi, two sides of the same coin, both believing in a light and dark side that doesn't exist. Not thinking about the unifying force, but limiting the force to be lesser. But if you have a Sith Lord that was good, does that not hammer in his already preconceived conceptions made by Vizier that there is only you, that there is no light or dark? If you can have a Sith that is, for all intents and purposes, light side, by not being a villain, just living life, then you have something to reaffirm those beliefs, that there is no light or dark, that it is only you. Because if a Sith can be good, then there is no such thing as light or dark. It is... Darth Vectivus had a different religious philosophy from the Jedi and lived a peaceful life. But even if he doesn't buy that, here's how you hammer in the point home. You mentioned Vizier, who gave Mara healing stuff, who helped form Jason to who he is, who sacrificed herself for him. He thinks she's a good person. I think she's a good person. You think she's a good person. And she already told Jason light and dark side are myths. I don't believe for a second that she's a Sith. I don't believe for a second that she's his traditional Jedi. Neither does Stover. Suck it. But if Jason can even doubt that for a second and think about how she could be, because again, she wouldn't be like Darth Vader. She wouldn't be like Palpatine because she's already convinced Jason that there is no light or dark side. So ultimately it would just be a matter of philosophy, of personal opinion. Nothing would really change in his opinion of Vizier because he doesn't believe that the dark side corrupts, so he doesn't believe that Vizier would be this monster even if she was a Sith. It's all about convincing Jason that whatever side you take, it doesn't matter because you're right, just as Lumaya was right, that the Force is not that binary, that there is no light and dark side. There is a unifying force that is greater than all of that, which was the whole point of New Jedi Order, is what it taught. That is literally what is hammered in again and again and again and again and again ad nauseum by Lucino in Unifying Force. That there is no light or dark, that there is only the Unifying Force. That is what is taught. Go read the book again. So, she needs to convince him of that. That is true. Absolutely. And so, if you join me, if you join the Sith path, it's just a different philosophy. You'll just gain some more knowledge, gain some more insights that can help you protect the ones you love. It's not going to corrupt you. There's no such thing as corruption, remember? Vizier told you so. And how is she privy to all that? I'm not exactly sure. And you could chalk that up to bad writing or an error on their part for how she knows everything that Vizier knows. Again, you could go into the assumption that she was a Sith and that they actually talked about all this stuff, or you can just go into the fact that they met. And Vizier might have tried to, philosophize in the same way she did with Jason to kind of determine what was up with Lumaya, only to realize that she was limited in her thinking, and so gave up with her and bailed, went back to the Vong for whatever reason. Again, it's okay to leave some things mysterious, just like we don't know much about Yoda's race. It's okay to not know every single detail about Lumaya or Vizier. It makes them more interesting. And the only other controversial bit about that is that Lumaya claims that, like Dooku, Vizier became disillusioned with the Order, and because of Dooku, she ended up finding Sidious, and she, for a short time, was also an apprentice, or like acolyte of Palpatine, and he kind of used Dooku and Vizier as a means to an end to kind of like, who's the better apprentice here, you know? But then, according to Lamaya, Vizier, you know, didn't like what she saw of Sidious, Palpatine, maybe even saw the future, and didn't like that, so tried to kill him, but it didn't work. And then she ran off, immediately took a mission by the Jedi to go to, Zamda Sakat, rogue planet. And then, of course, she meets the Vong, she lives with them, da-da-da-da-da. Do I believe this story concoction that she's created? No, I don't. I do like the fact that she brings up the prequels with mentioning Dooku. I love that. And a lot of people seem to hate that for some reason, but I like the connection to the prequels. It makes everything feel more whole. Do I believe that Vizier was a Sith acolyte that gave up on that ideal? Not really. But ultimately, it doesn't matter whether or not Lumaya is telling the truth about that or not. Either Vizier was someone that, was just a Jedi, and then ran off for the Vong for, 30 plus years, and gained a new philosophy and understanding of the Force due to the fact that she was with beings that were outside the Force for, years, and that's just going to change you. If your entire life you were taught that life is the Force and the Force is life, and then to be with beings that are outside of it, that's going to change your perspective. And then having to be in the embrace of pain, deal with all that pain, deal with all that suffering, be amongst that culture for so long, it'll change you. I'm sorry, it will. Because the Vizier we see in New Jedi Order is not the same Vizier of the Old Republic. It just isn't. And I think that's clear as day, and I think that's meant to be the case. I think that's pretty clear from Stover. At least when I talked to Stover, he's like, yeah, she's not a Sith, and those later books are stupid for claiming that. But you know what else is stupid? I just said, well, how about, there's a lot of friends online that are saying that she's just like a perfect Jedi, like Yoda, but she has to be kind of opaque and vague because there are Vong watching. He goes, that's interesting. I thought my entire book is pretty, I was paraphrasing. He was like, most of my book is, pretty interpretive. But the one thing I try to make very clear is that Vizier is not an ordinary Jedi. So I don't know where people are getting that notion from. So, But, so either we have the story we already have, she hangs out the Vong, gets a different perspective, different philosophy. Or you just have more added baggage on top of it. That she was a Jedi that was disillusioned with the Old Republic, meets Sidious for a bit. The timeline would be kind of weird there. Has to run away. And then, again, the same thing happens regardless. Whether or not she knew both the light and dark side, whether or not she served both, for a time, ultimately, regardless, the person she is by the time of New Jedi Order is neither Sith nor Jedi. This is Stover, too, saying she's not a Sith or Jedi. So regardless of the outcome, you still get the same result. So ultimately, it doesn't matter. Do I think we need that extra baggage to explain anything? No. But I think it's important that Lumaya mix in truth with lies. So I think it's important that she, if she can convince Jason of these things, and she even says that Vizier didn't leave the Sith because she believed the philosophy was inherently flawed or anything, but she didn't like what she saw with Palpatine. So, but regardless, again, I don't buy it. I don't think Vizier was ever an acolyte of Palpatine or anything, but it's important for Jason to even consider the possibility that she was, because that's the most important person to Jason in his entire life. So if he can be, even vaguely convinced of that, then Lumaya's won, which she even mentions near the end of the book. So again, because Lumaya believes in light and dark side, just like Luke does, just like Mara does, just like most of the Jedi do. It's just really only Jason still who believes in this unifying force concept. And if you can't tell, I found this entire part of the book fascinating. Purposelessness. Which, again, fits so in line with Jason, in my opinion, and is very relatable. Jason since Unifying Force. And this is consistent because he became one with the Force, yes. But he'd spend the rest of his life searching for that again. And when you have that most euphoric moment, again, the analogy of once you reach heaven, right? But then have to come back down. How does anything compare after that? How do you find purpose when you already felt the greatest thing you could ever feel in your lifetime, which is oneness with the Force, and to go back to normalcy after that? And he goes on a 5-year sojourn to try to find purpose, and by the end, still doesn't truly find it. The Darkness Crisis, is that his purpose? No, it gets resolved. What is his purpose? Purposelessness. He's felt that since Unifying Force. His purpose was to serve the Force, but in what way? Just being a Jedi isn't enough. It doesn't satisfy, doesn't fulfill him. What will? So trying to figure out meaning in hopelessness or purposelessness is hard. And Lamaya uses that. And then the final straw. There's a bunch of conversations and things going on in the last bit of this book, but the final straw, the nail in the coffin, is seeing Luke die from his hand if he doesn't accept this path. So he accepts it to save his uncle, who he loves dearly still. Now, I mean, no big spoilers here, but of course at some point he's going to want Luke dead. Is that a contradiction? Does that fly in the face of this book? No. Because what else happens in the EU? Oh, right. Anakin Skywalker falls to the dark side to save Padme, only to literally choke her out near the end of the movie. Is that a contradiction? No, because the dark side corrupts. You want another example? Kip Duran goes to kill an entire planet to save the one he loves, his brother, only to bring death to his brother, because the dark side corrupts. We could do this all day if you want. I'm right, you're wrong, get over it. But the fact of the matter is, it's not a contradiction, as some people might claim. It is simply the natural progression of the Sith, of the dark side of the Force, which is real, despite what Vergier might claim. Again, I think Vergier is this wonderful, kind person that wants what's best for Jason. But her entire belief system is entirely flawed. Entirely flawed. Based on the universe we exist in. Or that she exists in, I should say. So, there's that. But anyway, the book ends with Jason killing Nalani, beginning his arc of a Sith. Is he going to be this terrible monster supervillain by next book? Not really. He's going to start falling further and further. But the villain, the Sith Lord, will not be a thing till after Sacrifice. Because, even within this series, we continue to have character progression to eventually show this change and transition you into accepting such an arc. Even in this very series, where he's meant to go dark. But yes, he accepts the Sith path. But he by no means is trying to be a villain in this series. So, overall, I thought this first book was fantastic. There's a little bit of a dud in the middle section, but it picks up near the end and is super exciting, that first half of the story. So overall, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I think it's well worth your time. Props to this book for so much, for good writing, for having Aaron Allston back, for having a little funny moments between Wedge and Tycho, for having Pelion here, and Pelion just being on point as always, for Jason's arc, for Ben's character, and of course for such a big continuity tie-in, for including Lumaya. What love, what devotion to show to the Marvel Comics, but by including one of the most famous villains in there, who never got an ending. That is props to them, and it's really wonderful that they did that. And I love when the EU does continuity things like that. It's incredible. So, props to them. And I look forward to reading the next book by Karen Travis, Book 2, Bloodlines. Until then, guys, may the Force be with you.